to the Sugar and Spikes podcast, a show for everyone trying to navigate business and life without losing their minds. I'm Dez, a coach and consultant who is entirely overeducated, habitually overdressed, and obnoxiously honest.
And I'm Tammy. I'm a psychologist. Was I supposed to say more?
You know what? Enough said. We talk about mindset, mental health, and making it all work in the big, bad business world.
One quick note. We may be mental health professionals, but we're not your mental health professionals.
So, enjoy the show. I don't even know what to do or what not to do. This is what happens when we miss a week.
I know. It's like suddenly, I don't know what I'm doing anymore.
Yeah. Which I'm learning, like, a lot of people have that same experience when they're kicking off episodes.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's why I don't kick off the episodes.
I feel like I need to listen to, like, so many podcasts just to actually pay attention to how people, like, start theirs.
I'm thinking of all the ones that, like, I listen to.
I mean, I think, like, Ono, Ross, and Carrie, it's always kind of, like, the same general spiel.
Yeah. That's what came to my mind. I like the way they do theirs. And then Critical Role, he always says, like, welcome back, everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Because I listen to Critical Role.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't we ever talk about, like, who we actually, like, the podcast we actually listen to? I don't know if we did. Well, we can edit this out.
Wait, no, hold on. Tell our listeners your top 5.
Oh, my top 5. Well, Critical Role, I'm actually almost through campaign 1, so I've been kind of religiously listening to that for the last year and a half. That should tell you how much driving I've been doing.
Because if you guys didn't know, if you guys don't follow me on the Instagrams, we're kind of D&D nerds.
Yeah. So I'm pretty proud of myself. I am almost through campaign 1. So I've been kind of religiously listening to that and letting everything else kind of fall aside. But Ono, Ross, and Carrie is another favorite. I love them. I've loved them for a long time. Sexplanations. I really like that one. Jump in anytime. You put all the pressure on me.
No, I was letting you go first.
But because I've been trying to get through campaign 1, like all my other ones are just backlog.
Okay, so I will say Ono, Ross, and Carrie is definitely a
top.
Yeah. It is definitely one of the ones where I will always check it out. I'm a fan of a Bim Bam. So my brother and me. My husband got me hooked on that.
Oh, The Adventure Zone.
Yes. I mean, really, the McElroys can't do anything, like, wrong.
Yeah.
They're kind of podcasting saints. On that note, there's also Sawbones, which is good.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a McElroy.
Like, no. But, we're just being real here. I will tell you, the very first podcast I ever listened to was Ono, Ross, and Carrie. So it's like my old time, like, favorite. I've stuck with them for a long time. So
kind of like Ono, Ross, and Carrie, but also very much not like it, is Good Christian Fun, which is one of my new, like, ultimate favorite ones.
I'll have to try that one.
It started by one of the guys that did Gilmore Guys, which if that podcast was still going, that would be one of my tops. But it's these two folks who, like, kind of grew up in the church and now have a critical eye, but they're not there to disprove it.
Yeah.
Like, they still, like, hold faith and everything, but also look at Christian pop culture like, what the fuck is this? It's really good. And then I don't know how many I'm at, but my last one I guess I'll say is Heather Dubrow's World, because I'm very shallow and Heather Dubrow is, like, my spirit animal.
You're gonna think I'm such a nerd. So one of my favorite ones is TED Radio Hour. You're like, I can't believe you just said that.
I've never listened to it. I have no strong feels either way about it.
Because I love TED Talks. And so I don't listen to them all the time. I have a ton of backlogs, but they have a lot of, like, psychology topics. And so I really see it as like ways to expand my thinking as a psychologist. And so I find them very helpful. So that's why I dig those.
Yeah, I kind of backed off from the podcasts that connect with what I do
Mm-hmm.
for a bit. Like we talked about this in an earlier episode this year, just because I'm trying to like shut a lot of noise out, so
Yeah.
I'm not like in that space. But I did start just listening, just this like last week to the Story Brand podcast again, which is done by Donald Miller. Because I like that marketing framework and everything. So I'm like slowly incorporating that. But then it's totally like an addiction because I was like going through and there were like other podcasts like it and everything. And I was like, oh, and then I want to listen to this, and then I want to listen to this. And then I was like, nope.
Whoa.
Put the phone down, we're done. Because I could also feel myself starting to get overwhelmed again.
Yeah.
Like it was a very interesting experience.
Yeah.
So that was an unexpected intro.
Okay. We'll see if that stays in the episode. We'll see.
I think it should. Oh, please, if that one opener a few weeks ago about me talking about flight issues stayed in,
yeah.
this is 100% staying in.
Well, so what are we talking about today? The podcast week that wasn't.
Yeah, we're going to talk about why this intro was so hard for us to do. Because we didn't skip a week.
We didn't like mean to skip.
There was a week
that happened
where all hell broke loose.
Oh my gosh.
And we didn't get an episode up.
I think that's like a first for us, even when we've released late.
Yeah, we've definitely released late. But I think this is the longest we've gone in about 2 years.
Yikes.
Without a podcast.
Yeah, that
You know what though, if it was going to happen at any point, like this situation was the only way I think I would have been able to kind of cope with it, because I was so exhausted and like just done.
Yeah.
Where I had thoughts and feels about it, but also like there was one point where I don't want to say I didn't care, but I was just like, that's the situation, and there's that's it.
I mean, I felt that way too, because like I was talking to you about it, and I was because I said on the last episode, like I was sick and I had all these things happen, but we didn't really talk about like what happened for the both of us. But I felt really bad, and the bottom line was I couldn't do anymore. So it was like the one thing. It was like my laundry for the week. I just couldn't do the podcast. And I felt terrible about it. And I had all these like catastrophizing thoughts in my head. And if they come true, well, then I'm sorry.
I mean, I think I'm trying to think of like the best way to go through this. So I guess I don't know, like is going day by day like the best option, because it was like a process.
Yeah. So typically we record on the weekend. I forget why that didn't happen. Oh, was it the weather?
You were sick.
I was sick. I can't even remember
like
anymore.
Your family was sick, and then you were sick.
Okay, so yeah, my entire house came down with the plague, and so my partner, who is amazing in his own right, who usually takes care of the kids, he was just down. And then the kids got sick. So I was not getting out of the house last weekend because I was tending to everybody. And then I was going to come over Monday and we were going to kind of do it last minute. And then I got sick. So
that was Tuesday.
It was Tuesday by that time. See, I don't even know.
Because Monday you have Girl Scouts.
Yes, I have Girl Scouts.
I just know to not invite you over on Mondays.
Not Mondays. Because my daughter is a Girl Scout and that's her meeting. So I couldn't come Monday. So then I was going to come Tuesday and then I was sick. So then I was like, I just can't.
Mhm.
And then Wednesday, weather.
Well, like, okay, so Tuesday you texted,
Yeah.
and I think I may have been, like, not short, but just not, like, super verbose.
No, not at all.
You know? I was
You were
just
like,
like,
okay.
"Alright, fair." Like, what do you say when
I tell
feel
you,
better?
what do I tell
Like,
you? I'm sick for the 1,000th time.
just like, "God, that sucks. I'm glad I'm not you. Feel better."
Well, and I had all
Uh,
these thoughts running through my head. Like, I could probably go, but then, like, I'm not feeling good. And, like, everybody in the house just got sick. So that means
I didn't
Dez is
wanna get
probably going to get sick. And
sick.
if Dez gets sick, her partner gets sick. And then it's like a whole
He
bad.
just started a new
Yeah.
job,
So, like,
like
I have all that going through my head. And then I have, oh my gosh, we're not going to get a podcast done. Oh my gosh. Like, I totally let everybody down. And then I have all that. And then I'm like, but I'm just so tired.
So, I think it's kind of interesting that all of the angst about the podcast was happening during that time.
Yeah.
But, like, what Tammy didn't know was, Monday night, I, like, did not get any sleep because we had an unexpected house guest, which was fine, like, the roads were just bad. But I didn't get sleep because my dog doesn't like
No,
strangers.
he definitely does.
Um, and I just had a really, like, busy weekend and everything, so by Tuesday, I was just kind of nearly non-functional
Yeah.
throughout the day. Like, I got shit done, but I was definitely very zombie-like,
Mhm.
um, to the point where by the time, like, 6 o'clock rolled around, I the only thing I knew in the world at that point was the fact that I had a face
Oh, I
and
remember
a
you texting
mouth.
me that.
Like, I was so I was so aware that I had a mouth. Like, that's how tired I
So
was.
we were not in a good space.
So, I
Neither one of
mean,
us.
it would have been an interesting episode,
Yes.
but yeah. Um, so
But maybe not great.
Tuesday, I was just like, that's fine. I didn't start freaking out until the "Oh, nothing's coming out" until, like, I think maybe Wednesday or Thursday, where it was like, do I manage the situation? Do I acknowledge it? What, like, do I tell people what's going on? Like, what does this mean about me, like, as a podcaster, and all of all of these other, like, things,
Yeah.
you know? Um, and then I realized around, like, Friday or something where it was just, I don't think we've ever said this is a weekly podcast.
And also specifically taking pride in the fact that we never missed a week.
Yeah. But I don't think we ever started out with, like, the intention of.
Oh, no, that's true. That's true.
Um,
It's just kind of
and we
an
never promised. It was really grasping at straws on Friday.
Well, no, I think you make a good point, right? So, like, I think all of this is to say this is kind of like chronic burnout in action. These are
Mhm.
whether you're a podcaster, whatever you do.
Blogger,
Blo-
personal shopper. I'm
okay,
thinking
those
of,
are
like,
the three you came
absurd
up with?
dog walker.
Like, when you're at the point where we're at, it's not as easy as just saying, okay, I'm going to take some time off and I'm going to
Mhm.
rest.
Yeah.
Those aren't the thoughts that go through your head. You don't just say, okay, like all these things like
Mhm.
come into your
Yeah.
mind, right? Like,
Mhm.
what does this mean for me as a podcaster? What does this mean for me as someone like I'm totally letting Des down? Like I'm totally letting the audience
What does this
down,
mean
right?
for the audit? Yeah.
Yeah, like
Mhm.
what does this mean about me that like I'm letting this responsibility, like I'm not fulfilling like this responsibility, that I'm not getting this task done,
Mhm.
right? Like um so like these are the things that come up for people.
Mhm.
I think people can relate,
Mhm.
which is why we felt it was kind of good to share it.
Yeah. And I think one of the most interesting or beneficial things about it was really we had kind of built up this whole, like, we are super consistent, like, identity in our brains, and I say living through, like, we experienced, like, some significant trauma, but kind of, like, going through the process of and that didn't happen.
Yeah. So
It
now
was really good, like, introspection,
yeah.
you know? Like, I took time, I was like, "Well, is this an indication that maybe, like, our lives aren't conducive to the schedule and all of these things?" And then it was like, "Whoa, baby in bathwater, hold on."
I
Like but that's also, like, I feel like for so many people, if it's not, like, perfect or if it's not planned, then there is this, like, then it's not good, then it's done. You
yeah.
know, like, there's very much a 100% or 0% type of
Right,
thing.
all that black and white.
Mhm.
Because that's what I did too,
Yeah.
right? Like, you were like, "Well, maybe our lives just this isn't the right time." And then I was like, "Well, maybe our audience are just gonna be like, 'Fuck you too.'" And, like, maybe that'll happen, I don't know, but,
Mm.
like, maybe not,
Yeah.
right? So, like and maybe our lives maybe that doesn't mean that our lives aren't set up for this
Yeah.
because we have made it 2 year has
Yeah.
it been 2 years? 2 years we've missed one time. So
Yeah.
I think that kind of speaks to the fact that maybe our lives are set up for this and
Mhm.
some unexpected things
Yeah.
happened, right? And so like not going from 0 to 100 black to white,
Yeah.
but kind of putting and realizing that even though we live in these gray spaces,
Mhm.
it doesn't mean that we don't go to those
Mhm.
black and white, like, extremes too,
Mhm.
but doing the introspection and being like, "Hold on a minute, like, wait a
Yeah.
minute, think about this." You can kind of adjust,
Mhm.
right? If that made any sense, I don't know.
No, I think that that's the key because so often there's this desire for an out, especially when things like start to look successful and they start to look bigger and better and all of these things, and we have hit a flow, and the feedback we're getting is like, I don't want to say more positive, but we're getting more feedback, and it's just like it's becoming really, I mean, like, what we've set out for it to be.
Yeah.
Took 2 goddamn years. But I
I
mean,
don't really think that that's that long though when you think I don't
I
know.
know.
I don't think
But that's the thing, like, there's these nerves around, "Oh, oh crap," like
now people have expectations of
yeah,
us. Yeah.
and
Before it was just our own
exactly,
expectations.
we were talking into, like, this vacuum, and that was fine. Um, like, I'll get messages from people that I, like, fully don't expect to be listening to the podcast, like, giving me their thoughts and everything. I'm like,
Mm,
"Okay."
that's awesome.
Which is fabulous, and it's yeah, it was one of those things where I had to check in, like, am I looking for an out?
Mhm.
You know? Do I want an out? Like, am I content with, like, what this is serving in my life and all of the like, it was such an interesting experience to go through.
Yeah.
Um, but that self-awareness, I think you and I had, like, the privilege of having it because of our training.
Yeah.
And I would say, I would hypothesize, it's it's more difficult, like, if you haven't been trained to be so painfully self-aware.
Yeah. I agree. Look how much we went through when we are trained that way,
Yeah.
right? Like it, it's just part of I think the human experience.
Mhm.
And even with the best of training
Mhm.
with masters and doctorates and how to be self-aware, which is
Mhm.
basically what we
Yeah.
have, we still have these things happen to us,
Mhm.
right? And you think about like we missed 1 week
Mhm.
and we were having all of
Yeah.
this. So imagine when it's a more serious thing that
Mhm.
happens and how people must feel.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm just right now, I'm flashing back to when someone
Sorry.
told me no, I'm just thinking about the time that someone told me that I had no self-awareness. That is another
I
story for another time.
Oh, I remember that.
Um
What? That's crazy town. Anyway, but like when more serious things happen to
Mhm.
people, how kind of devastating
Mhm.
that is. Because this felt pretty devastating to me.
Yeah.
And I've had way worse levels of devastating, but
Mhm.
I mean, it brought up a lot of shit. Like it just
Yeah.
did.
Well, and I mean, after so long, it becomes a piece of your
Right.
identity. So then there was an element of identity that was called into question almost,
Right.
And as we've talked about for the last couple of episodes, anything that challenges your identity is going to throw you for a fucking loop.
Yeah.
Like,
It feels like super threatening.
yeah, I don't care what the thing is that is challenging your identity.
Yeah.
I don't care. I don't care if it's like some kid coming up to you and being like, "You're ugly."
Yeah.
Like you're going to be thinking about that goddamn kid for a minute.
Yeah.
So
So yeah.
yeah, I don't like.
And it's okay that that happened.
Yeah.
Like we're still here. We're still okay. Like our worlds didn't come crashing down
Yeah.
around us as much as we thought that they would.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But we had good supports
Mm-hmm.
and a fair amount of ability to kind of step back from it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So for folks that maybe haven't done the training, what how would they handle the little kid on the street?
you reach out to your bestie, to your life coach,
Mm-hmm.
to your therapist, to your counselor, to
Mm-hmm.
anybody who can help
Mm-hmm.
provide that introspection, that
Mm-hmm.
self awareness to you,
Yeah.
that empathetic support, but
Mm-hmm.
also that challenging of your
Mm-hmm.
beliefs.
Yeah.
Gently, please.
And I think like it could also start like internally, and we kind of started talking about this on the last episode in terms of like who says.
Yeah.
But it could be like if you don't feel comfortable reaching out, I mean that's another topic. But if like you're maybe not in that space, then having like predefined questions that you're willing to work with.
Yeah.
Like, what is the situation? How do I feel about the situation? What do I think the situation says about me? Like, is that true? One of my favorite journal prompts that I've ever like been given was, is it true?
Mm.
Like, just for so many things. You know? What is true? Just like those pieces.
Yeah.
And if you're in a space like making yourself think about it.
Or if you're like super like nerdy analytical. I remember when I was applying for an internship and I was talking to one of my mentors and I was like, what if I don't get any interviews? What if I get rejected by everybody? And she looked at me and she said, the data doesn't support that.
Yeah. Well, we talk about that with imposter syndrome.
Yeah. So one of the questions might be, what does the data say?
Yeah.
Like you were like, well, maybe our lives just can't handle this, but the data doesn't support that, right? So like, what is the data telling you? What conclusions can you draw from the more objective pieces?
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
That's
That's just what I thought.
The data says that our podcast is all about living in the gray and messiness, and finally the messiness has hit the podcast.
I know.
That is what the data says.
And we missed one time in 2 years. Like,
Yeah.
Probably we're fine.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, we talked about in the last episode how we tend to make errors about, is it an internal trait or part of us, or is it the situation?
Yes.
So that's another good question. Like, is it something about us, or is it more about the situation that we found ourselves in?
Because I will say, like, we've been doing this a minute and life has happened a lot. But this was really the first time where there was such a unique confluence of external events.
Yeah.
Because so often it's like one of us going through something mostly personally. Like, the world doesn't come for the both of us at the same time.
Typically, no. But man, it did.
Except this time it did.
It did. In a big way.
Yeah. So I think, in summary, I almost wish this were a video podcast. um, I think I think it starts with like this awareness that the black and white, the all or nothing is the easiest thing to cling to when
Oh,
things become uncertain because one of the first things both of us did was maybe we just need to be done.
yeah.
Like maybe it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
Um which how how much does it say about the brain looking for some sort of like solid rock to grasp onto when something has been a part of our lives for so long? And because in that moment, shit's kind of gone to hell, we're like, easiest answer is we're done.
Is fuck it.
Like, so being aware of that.
So maybe a good standard question could be like, am I thinking in a black and white way?
Mm-hmm.
Am I at one of the extremes right now?
Mm-hmm.
How could I think a little less, a little more in the gray?
Mm-hmm.
So that'd be a good because we talked
Yeah.
about like some predetermined questions,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we're just kind of like throwing out ideas. These
Yeah.
aren't the only ones. You can make up your own.
Use them for inspiration. I'd rather
Please.
you not exactly use the ones
Yeah.
that we throw out because those are the ones, like, the ones I list are the ones that work for me.
Right. Like
Tammy has her own evidence-based ones. Nerd.
I'm sorry. And you know yourself best,
Yeah.
right? So you know what works for you. But these are all ways. Like,
Mm-hmm.
am I reacting to the situation?
Mm-hmm.
Am I responding to the situation? That's another one, right?
Mhm.
Like, there's so many.
Do you want to talk about reaction versus response?
Yeah. So reaction is kind of like you just do it. Like you do it without thinking. Somebody hits you, you hit them back.
Yeah.
Right? Like you just do it, you act on your emotion, your impulse, your feeling, your thought, whatever.
You could interchange it with reflex. It's
Yeah,
kind
kinda.
of like the doctor hits you on the knee and you kick the doctor in the face.
And a response is, okay, I'm having this feeling like
Mhm.
I would just want to say fuck it and walk away.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I can act on that. I can kind of skillfully manage that through
Mhm.
coping, or I can just kind of tolerate it while doing nothing.
Mhm.
I can just kind of sit with it. But it's being and taking a deliberate action
Mhm.
rather than that reflex.
Yeah. And I think especially like in jobs, like the podcast isn't like our job, but it's a professional offering.
Yeah.
And like in terms of work and stuff, there's so much passion fueling the things that we do
Mhm.
that reacting can sometimes be good. I would venture to say it's definitely the way we tend to like operate, like go to first. Um and can be the most harmful. And I think we may have talked about it on a couple of episodes like a while ago where like if something happens at work and you just like you want to do something
Yeah.
not great and broke down the reaction versus response thing. But I think even for like good things and stuff, like taking the beats to really acknowledge whatever happens like with work or professional stuff. And if it's a good thing, then at the very least, like the worst that happens is you have an extra moment to be excited about it.
Yeah.
You know, I think.
Look, there's a time and a place for reaction.
Mm-hmm.
There is.
Yeah.
And not for every situation. So it's not that one's inherently better.
Mm-hmm.
Reaction, response. If my kid's running out in the street,
You're gonna
I'm not
react.
going to take the time to think about like what would be the best response here. I'm going to react.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really obvious example, but there's other ones
Mhm.
too. And then there's times for responding,
Mhm.
like, hey, my boss and I are really not seeing eye to eye right now. Maybe I shouldn't scream in their face and storm out, like, which is what I want to do,
Mhm.
but not what I'm going to do. I'm
Mhm.
going to kind of sit with it and then figure
Mhm.
out a plan and then come back another time. So that might be more of a time for like a response, right? But
Mhm.
only you can decide what's right
Yeah.
for you and when
Mhm.
those situations are.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah.
that's anyway.
So with situations, r- reacting versus responding.
Yeah.
Challenging yourself or reaching out to others.
Mhm.
And then I would say like acknowledging and moving on. Like, I feel like this episode is really like one of the core tenets of PR, like at play, which is if you mess up, acknowledge it.
Yeah.
You know, like every time there's a scandal, find some sort of truth in the scandal and be like, "Yup, it happened," and then move on.
Okay.
You know, so yeah.
I mean, I'll own it.
Mm-hmm.
And we weren't happy about it.
Yeah.
And that's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to move forward.
Exactly.
And hopefully you can forgive us,
Mm-hmm.
listeners.
Yeah.
If you felt like we let you down, because that wasn't our intention.
Mm-mm. And reassess your expectations, because like I said, we never promised weekly.
Okay.
All right, on that note, I keep thinking of that friggin' meme, the lower your expectations. I feel like that's what we all need to do for a moment.
Or
Everybody.
have more realistic
Yeah.
expectations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um.
But there we have it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Next week, we're talking about something
Amazing.
so interesting. If you guys want to hear my thoughts on why social media is fucking us all up,
Tune
listen next
in.
week. Bye, guys.
Bye, friends.